And while we get ready to start the day, we'll request you to please join us for tea and coffee, which is being served outside. We'll request you to please have something to eat and drink, and then we get the evening, the day together as we started. Thank you. Well, I'd like to request everyone to please join us in the ballroom. We are starting the day now. Thus, all of you who are there in the pre-function area, you are requested to join us in the ballroom. Thank you. And everybody else, you're requested to please make yourself comfortable. All right. Shall we start the day? Yes? Only one yes? How about everybody else? Great. Good morning, everyone. I thought I'll get one back. Thank you. Thank you to the ones who wished me, and thank you to the ones who are getting ready to wish me. Well, with this, ladies and gentlemen, it's time we get this day started. And I'm going to start it with a quote by Leo Christopher. He says, "There's only one thing more precious than time. It is who we spend it on." I'd like to change it a little. I'd say, there's only one thing more precious than time. It is who we spend it on and what do we spend it on. Today, you chose us. I'm certain this cause is as important to you as it is to us. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we get ready for this day with meaningful conversation, thought provoking sessions, and impactful discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Bhavna Sharma, your host for the day, and I would love to extend my heartiest, my warmest welcome to each one of you on behalf of JSW and the Times of India to this discussion under the ambit of 13th edition of Earth Care Awards. Thank you for joining us. Well, today marks the first in a series of multi-city outreach events designed not only to create awareness about the Earth Care Awards, but also to spark meaningful conversations on the pressing challenges that demand urgent, innovative, and collective solutions. The objective of this gathering is not only to introduce the vision of the Earth Care Awards, but also to engage climate warriors, policymakers, innovators, and community leaders in shaping solutions that are impactful, inclusive, and scalable for a resilient future. Since its inception in 2008, the Earth Care Awards have served as a pioneering platform to recognize and celebrate visionaries, innovators, and community leaders who are shaping solutions to one of humanity's greatest challenges: climate change. The theme of today's discussion, climate action at the crossroads, health, livelihoods, and equity for a resilient future, reminds us that climate change is no longer a silent issue. It impacts cut across health, nutrition, food system, urbanization, gender, and social equity, and call for a systematic and collaborative response. Well, with this, ladies and gentlemen, we get ready for the program of the day. And to open this day, also to set the tone for the dialogue, I'm delighted to invite Ms. Rupa Davne. Ms. Rupa comes with a vast working in the field of environmental management of over 25 years. She's extremely passionate about conservation and restoration of ecology and environment and has been a field guide and project leader for BNHS and WWF India. Please put your hands together as we welcome Ms. Rupa Davne, Head Water, Environment and Sanitation, JSW Foundation. Welcome to the stage, ma'am. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bhavna. Hello. I think yeah, give me the mic. Anyway, I think I'm loud enough. I don't even need the mic. So, thank you so much. Good morning, all of you all, and thank you, Bhavna, for setting the tone. Instead of like you've already given the background. And as she says, Earth Care Awards are in the it's the 13th edition. We this initiative, the joint initiative, was started way back in 2008 when nobody was even talking about climate change. So I'm really very happy and proud to be associated with the Earth Care Awards movement, if I may call it so. So I'm just going to quickly run you through what Earth Care Awards has, the milestone that we've achieved and where we've come. In the last 12 editions, we've had 102 winners. We've had like multiple thousands and thousands of applicants in various categories. So, no? Am I going too fast? Okay. So just to give you all a background, the Earth Care Awards is a platform, as Bhavna rightly mentioned, which for bringing people together, looking at various solutions in the climate change mitigation and adaptation space, the visionaries who've been working to bring about a change in the communities that we work with. JSW Foundation, as you all know, is the CSR implementing arm of the JSW group. So when we work in the field, the most vulnerable categories as we look at is always women, children, the most underserved in the country. So whatever climate change extremities that you see, whether it's flooding, heat waves, cyclones, all across, wherever, the numbers that we look at, I was just discussing with Dr. Preeti and she was again, mentioning she would like to bring that, highlight it as we go ahead. So here we are, done? All right. One most important category that we added last year, which is very close to our hearts, and I'm sure it's going to resonate with the entire audience here, is the young climate change champions. Now we received such an overwhelming response for that category, and everybody's really appreciated it because the kind of, the youth that we saw there, how do you say, they are our future, and sustainability is for the future generations, as we say. So their participation, their ideas really gave us an extra step it added in our movement. That was really very heartening. Can I? So as I said, Earth Care Awards provides a platform for various initiatives in Earth Care, in the climate change space, whether it's mitigation or adaptations. We have 6 categories. And these categories over the years we've been refining them. Some have been added, some have been excluded as time has passed. Since 2008 to 2025 has been a long, long journey. We have a community-led climate action. The second category is institutional leadership in the climate action space. Now we have a lot. Last year our winner in this category was Indore Municipal Corporation. So I think that says a lot about the awards itself. It really takes our stature that much more higher. One more very interesting category is the emerging businesses in climate change. Again, when we worked with various groups and the application that we were receiving, we realized there's so much innovation happening, there's so much happening in the business space. Fourth category, again, is communicators. This is a new category that we have introduced here with Times of India with us. We realize that there are various people communicate the whole idea, whole importance of climate change in various forms. So we've had many filmmakers, we have young speakers, we had last year, in fact, and a year before that, we had kids as young as 9 and 12 telling us what climate change is, why it is important, and what we should be doing about it. Hence, we've added this category, and we are hoping to see many, many more films and other communication medium that comes out from here. Women in climate action, I think the category and the name says everything. As I said, most vulnerable groups and the young climate action, young climate champions. These are our categories. We have esteemed jury members, which is being led by Professor Ajay Mathur Here again, I would like to just mention that Dr. Mashelkar was our chair jury for the last 5 years, and he's just stepped down. One is because he also, from principally he says I should be not be associated with any moment for more than 5 years. It becomes stale. He wanted new faces and new ideas to be coming in. That's why he has nominated Dr. Ajay Mathur, and he has very gracefully accepted to be our chair jury. We of course have Arunabha Ghosh. He's with us today, and we are going to hear lovely ideas from him. Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, who is the chairperson of the MS Swaminathan Foundation. Rajat Gupta and Shloka Nath, these are our esteemed members. And why it is important is once our call for applications are open, as I told you, every year we receive over thousands of applications, and then their expertise comes through where they then decide who are the nominees. I mean, how do we shortlist them, how we go ahead and then award. It's a huge task in itself, and they make it much more easier. A little more details about the categories: community-led climate action. In this category, we recognize grassroots level climate action initiatives that combine local knowledge, innovation, and inclusive participation, which can lead to reduction in the emissions, enhance resilience, and improve livelihoods. Once we open this for applications, all the details will be given on our website, and you have all the details about what the category means and who can apply in these. Second is the institution leadership in climate action. Like I said, last year one of the winners was Indore Municipal Corporation, but of course once we reach that, it's a tall task, and I'm sure we'll have many more classical solution providers in this space itself. Emerging businesses, again, I think this doesn't need any more explanation from me, recognizes forward-thinking business enterprises developing innovative, scalable solutions which work in the climate mitigation as well as adaptation space. Communicators, as I said, it can be visual storytelling, audio, music, digital content, writers, etc. And women leadership, in fact, we are very happy to share with you that one of our ex-winners in the women's category, her name is Nidhi Pant. She went on to win the Prince William Earthshot Prize, which I thought was a great achievement for us, and we are happy that we were able to recognize it before time. And the Youth Young Climate Champion Program, here our knowledge partners, and the way we lead it is through Earth Day organization, and we reach out to colleges across India. We reached out in 10 cities last year. This year we hope to move to more cities, have more outreach. Some of our winners of the past, we've had since there are 102 illustrious list, and these are our social media partners, these are our social media handles. And the partner ecosystem, most important knowledge partners are TTC, our outreach partners are CEW, India Climate Collaborative, the Earth Day organization, and the Sustainability Mafia. I'm sure you all are very eager to hear from our esteemed panel members and the fireside chat. I now hand it over to where is Bhavna? Thank you so much for being patient, Bhavna. Please take over. And if you have any more questions, we are all here for, how what else can be done. And then we're looking at collaboration, most important, like Dr. Preeti also will bring it up. Thank you, dear.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for setting the tone. Yeah, let's hear it loud together. All right, up next, ladies and gentlemen, we are getting ready for an absolutely engaging and impactful fireside chat. I'll request my team to please put the chairs on the stage. Well, while we are putting the chairs on the stage, I will request you to please visit our website, which is www.earthcareawards.com, for more information on categories and eligibility details to register and submit your application. Well, with this, ladies and gentlemen, All right, we get ready now. So first, I'd like to invite the moderator of the chat. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we welcome Mr. Ashutosh Sinha. He's senior editor at the Economic Times, the Times of India. Over the years, Ashu as he's called, he has tracked India's IT services, technology, and telecom industries, and we are so happy that you've joined us to moderate the chat. Let's welcome you, everyone. Can we hear it? Thank you. And with this, I'm going to invite a very special person, ladies and gentlemen. He's one of the foremost voices on climate and energy transitions in India. Very happy to invite Dr. Arunabha Ghosh. He's CEO at Council on Energy, Environment and Water. He's an internationally recognized public policy expert, author, columnist, and institution builder who advises governments, industry, civil society, and international organizations around the world. Dr. Ghosh has been a member of the UN Committee for Development Policy since 2019, nominated by the UN Secretary General Vice Chair. Let's put our hands together as we welcome him on the stage. Now I'll request Mr. Sinha to take it over.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being patient today and for this I'd say rather important conversation in times that are very interesting. So Dr. Ghosh, my mind goes back maybe about 170 years or so. And that I thought could be one way to begin this conversation. A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. I'm sure most of you would have heard of him, read him. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the season of hope. It was the season of despair. Was he talking about 2025?
Ashu, thank you for that provocation. And thank you to Times of India and JSW Earthcare Awards for inviting me here. He might have been talking about 2025. He might have been reflecting when he was writing it about actually what happened nearly a century prior related to the French Revolution. But he was writing it bang in the middle of the Industrial Revolution. So when it comes to climate change, or anthropogenic climate change, which is the additional greenhouse gases that our activities as humans adds to the Earth's atmosphere, the best and worst of times of human history have been a result of that kind of activity. Now, when it comes to 2025, one could argue, yes, you know, there's despair. The US has walked out of the Paris Agreement. Climate change is no longer necessarily the top agenda item for high politics. One could also argue that last year we had more renewables deployed in the world than ever before. More renewables deployed than fossil fuels. In India, renewable energy capacity has been outpacing fossil fuel deployment for the last 6-7 years. We could argue that India itself deployed 30 gigawatts of renewables last year, $50 billion of investment. That's not pocket change. We could point out to the 1.9 million electric vehicles that India sold in FY25. Did you know that? So, you know, with anything, there's always going to be, you know, your perspective. It's not what you, well, as Sherlock Holmes said, you know, you see but you do not observe. So what is it that we are trying to observe? And you started by talking about the first lines of Tale of Two Cities. The last lines of Tale of Two Cities go something like this. It is by far the best thing I have done. I'm trying to remember. So it is by far the best thing that I have done that I do than I have ever done. It is by far the better rest I'm going to than I have ever been. And these lines are spoken as the protagonist waits for the guillotine to chop off his neck. The question is, how can we make climate action not one of sacrifice and despair, but still something that is aspirational enough for it to be by far the better thing that we have ever done, and by far the better rest that we go to than we've ever been.
It's the hope. I completely agree there. It's the hope that we all need to have, and policymakers need to live up to that hope. As India's special envoy for COP30, what strong action will you suggest ahead of that so that it justifies some of the action companies are taking, some of the achievement that policymakers and importantly, communities would like to see?
Well, first of all, just a correction. I am the special envoy for South Asia, not India, and I'm not a climate negotiator. So I probably have the privilege of being able to say things that negotiators can or cannot. So what would I wish for? Number one thing I would wish for is a change in our own mindset, which is that it often, when things are going well, we say, yes, we are doing a bunch of things. But when we see, a little bit of slowdown in climate action elsewhere or some backtracking elsewhere, we very quickly flip the narrative to, see, the US has exited, therefore why should we act? Or Europe is doing this, so therefore why should we act? While that sounds like a nice repartee, actually it completely undermines the basis of India's own climate action, which is domestic. We are acting on climate change because we are one of the world's most vulnerable countries. Our National Action Plan on Climate Change was initiated in 2008, the same year as the global financial crisis, pre-Copenhagen, pre-Paris. So it does a massive disservice to multiple governments over the years, at the central and the state level, to industry and to civil society and academia, to suggest our climate action should be contingent only on whether the US is moving forward or not. The second thing I would want as we lead up to COP30 is get a sense of what is the scale of action that is happening. I gave some idea of it, whether it's on renewables or mobility, but so many other things on the industrial decarbonization side, not that we have succeeded, but we have begun to lay the foundations, whether it is a green hydrogen mission, whether it is the world's first taxonomy on green steel, whether it is the critical minerals mission, which was approved by Cabinet earlier this year. These are all part of the architecture that we need on the policy side that can give signals to the market for industry, small and big, to come forward. So let's fix our own mindsets and let's begin to demonstrate or project a narrative of action.
So since COP30 is just around the corner, a little bit of comment on what we've achieved since, let's say, COP26, when we spoke of the 500 gigawatts installed capacity. Today we've achieved that well ahead of schedule. By 2030 is what the Prime Minister said. We've achieved that 2 months ago, 50% installed capacity by renewables. What other positive things are happening which put that hope that policymakers are on the right track?
See, with climate and the energy transition, both of the next two statements I will say are true. One, the climate is changing faster than our models have predicted. And two, the energy transition is happening faster than our businesses expect. Right? And therefore, when we think about the announcement that was made in 2021 in Glasgow, you have to go back to, again, the origins of this story. That's why I talked about the National Action Plan on Climate Change. And the solar mission began in 2010. In 2015, when we were negotiating the Paris Agreement, that time India had less than 2 gigawatts of solar. Right? 2010, when we began, we had less than 20 megawatts of solar. Right? So when that began, the target was 20 gigawatts by 2022. In 2015, the target was raised to 100 gigawatts of solar, 175 gigawatts of renewables. And then you see that with better market design, with institutional innovations that de-risk the power generator away from the utility, which brings down the cost of capital, therefore brings down the solar tariffs, etc., you're accelerating faster. So by the time we hit 2021, we were at a stage where we could argue that, give or take, we can go for this 500 gigawatts of non-fossil. Non-fossil is beyond renewables. That includes large hydro, nuclear, etc. But bulk of it, over 400 gigawatts, will be renewables. Now, what we've achieved 50% installed capacity. That does not mean we have 50% generation share, right? So that's a whole new story. Now, will we get there in 2030? Let me just give you one set of facts, or at least projections. My colleagues modeled the entire Indian power sector down to a 15-minute dispatch, means there should be no downtime for a fast-growing economy, all the way to 2030. So why is this important? We are a fast-growing economy, 6.5%, even with the US tariff, maybe 6%. But our power demand is growing faster. So if we hit 500 gigawatts, then we will not need additional coal capacity to be built over and above what's already in the pipeline. But if we did not hit 500 gigawatts, then we will end up having to build about 6 gigawatts of coal capacity. Now, this is in a moderate scenario. But if there is a high power demand, means the economy is racing and power demand is racing, and we hit only, say, 400 gigawatts, we will need 16 additional gigawatts of coal capacity. But if we went to 600 gigawatts of non-fossil, let's say, then we get actually the cheapest cost power with no additional coal. Why is this important? Because the infrastructure that we build in future there has to be a step change from the legacy infrastructure we've inherited from the past. Because it's linked to not just announcements in Glasgow or Paris or Belém in Brazil. It's linked to what is the quality of life we want. It's linked to the air that we want to breathe. It's linked to the cost of power you and I want to spend money on. It's linked to competitiveness of industry. Until and unless we think about this arc of shifting climate from the margins of economic conversation to the mainstream of growth planning and development planning, we will, get stuck between that hope and despair challenge.
That's a tough ask for some of the companies, some of the institutions to follow. In the manner or over the years that you've advised governments, co-chaired, councils, what is the leadership quality from governments, from society, civil society, that you'd see works best and has helped goad communities into action, policymakers into action?
I think there are two things. At a central government level, clarity of policy and direction of policy is absolutely critical. And to a large extent, at least on the energy transition, we've seen that, which again gives confidence that, the direction of travel is set for India. A lot of people, again, back to the solar mission, when it began, a lot of people say, 20,000 megawatts of solar is impossible, etc. Right? Then they say, 100,000 megawatts, completely impossible. And then when 2020 hit, we told you it was impossible, but then you hit it in, 2 years later. So it's, in geological time spans, 1 year delay or a half year early is really not the issue. The issue is whether you're giving correct market signals. But at a state or subnational level, you need to make sure that those contracts are honored. It's absolutely critical. There's only that much amount of de-risking that you can do until and unless industry knows that if it is buying power, it will get it on time, it will be firm. Power generators know that if they're selling power, that they're going to be paid for it. But back to then communities, right? A lot of the push for the energy transition will depend on how the energy transition comes closer to communities. If you only think of it as some big solar plant far out in Rajasthan, then you actually don't understand the scope of what 300 days of sunshine offers for India. It's every roof, every parking lot, every hotel, right? That becomes a potential power plant. So when you start doing that, you have to start reimagining the power markets of the future, which is going to be much more decentralized, which could leverage the digital revolution by supporting more decentralized and peer-to-peer trading of the electrons, and which will be progressively more green. So at a central government level, clarity on the direction of travel, but at a state and city level, I would say much more nimbleness with the regulations that we have to open up and innovate with the markets of the future.
You know, one thing caught my attention about the storytellers who will, storytellers, was it? Was it the communicators? Communicators was the word. How do they help shape the scientific narratives vis-a-vis what public storytelling brings about and ultimately drives maybe policy action as well?
Yeah, I mean, there are two types of stories. There's fiction and non-fiction, right? We have to make sure that the stories are not greenwashing and undermining the larger narrative that we are trying to paint. That being said, there is a huge role for storytelling because we are a social species and we listen to each other, we learn from each other. I'll give you a couple of years ago, I was in a meeting of some of the world's largest institutional investors. And I asked them, what is the biggest risk that you find when it comes to investing in emerging markets? And one of them answered, they said, you know, we always talk about currency risk, policy risk, political risk, land acquisition risk, etc., etc. But the biggest risk for us, if you're sitting in London or sitting in New York, deciding where to put money, is anecdotal risk. So what is anecdotal risk? They said, well, it's like this. And this is pretty straight up. I mean, you might not like the answer, but it's what I heard. So, you know, we've got analysts in our teams analyzing, you know, should I put money towards Indonesia or Kenya or India, or should I just put it in Minnesota or whatever, right? And then I go play golf with my buddy. And my buddy says, you know, I invested in Indonesia 5 years ago and this happened and I lost my money. That storytelling, that negative storytelling, colors my perception more than any analyst report that I get. And this is real. So now, flip the narrative. What if the golf buddy was saying, hey, you're missing out on one of the world's biggest returns on investment possible in driving the energy transition of the emerging markets, where 90% of additional electricity demand will come. What are you putting money in treasury bills of the US? Why aren't you thinking about India or Kenya or Indonesia? Right? Yes, there are risks, but I invested and I was an early mover. What are you doing? So this is why there's a difference between fiction and non-fiction. This is why, you know, storytelling shouldn't be just about, you know, uplifting Yanni type of music and suddenly you see a solar panel and say, oh yeah, great. No, the real stories are those that are authentic. So I'll tell you a story. 13 years ago, almost exactly in October 2012, I was in rural Karnataka. And I came across this farm laborer, landless farm laborer, who had a hut inside the forest. And he had a sliced bamboo pipe on top of his thatched roof from where he was collecting water, rainwater. and he had a single solar panel on his roof. At that time, that solar panel cost 60,000 rupees, and the exchange rate at that time meant it was $400. So I asked him, I said, how have you have no collateral, you have no land, you have no farm, how have you managed to, take a loan for 16,000 rupees and get this? So he says, I have two white shirts. In fact, I remember when I walked into his property, one white shirt was hanging on the clothesline. Both were hanging, and as I walked in, he quickly took off one white shirt and put it over his lungi. He had two white shirts, and before solar, I was using kerosene for lighting. And it was making my white shirts dirty. So I was spending 50 rupees a month, $1, on detergent powder. After solar, I'm now spending only 20 rupees a month on detergent powder. Now, I have, till date, never come across a Wall Street banker who has figured out a financing model for the energy transition based on detergent powder savings. Right? But that is also an authentic story. It's not an anecdote of one. This is when we had less than 2,000 megawatts of solar in the country. We have over 100,000 megawatts of solar in the country today. So the power of narratives and the power of authentic storytelling is first and foremost the importance of being on the ground, of having done it yourself. Whether you are a startup in the room, whether you're a big utility, whether you're a think tank, whether you're an NGO, do it, learn, fail, and then tell your story. That is the authenticity we need.
That reminds me of another person of that same era that I was talking about, Charles Dickens, which is Karl Marx. Economics is the basis of all human relationships. So, something. One final question before we move to a bit of rapid fire.
Sure.
How does a platform like EarthCare Awards drive communities, policymakers? And again, I'm including all of them because the interest has to come from the communities and the wider set of policymakers, companies, institutions. How does that help build the movement?
Having started CW from scratch, the one thing I resonate with always is that it is extremely lonely. Right? And the same perhaps can be said for any startup trying to, innovate with climate tech, maybe merge climate tech and fintech, maybe bring in community action, etc. It is extremely lonely. And at CW, when we work with startups, we have a mantra: start with the entrepreneur, but then support the enterprise, but really build the ecosystem. What EarthCare Awards has the potential to do, and in some cases already done, is to help build the ecosystem. That is the real potential. The real potential is not individual awardees or those 5 categories. The real potential is that you realize that I'm one among many. You realize that after the bright shining lights when you get the award, actually the real value is if I can sit around the table and talk to another awardee and almost have a sort of an advisory board of ranting and venting. What is the problem you're facing? I'm facing this problem. I can't seem to find talent. I don't know how to do the reporting. And someone else will say, no, I figured out the reporting stuff. Let me tell you, I need help with this. That is what we need. Anyone who is an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur within your own organizations will realize that the way to overcome the loneliness is to seek out. And if EarthCare Awards can help create that community of practice, that community of hope, that community of action and celebration of failure, not just of success, that would be my hope for where the EarthCare Awards can go.
Okay, time for a little bit of rapid fire, maybe. So, one of the questions is, if you were to define a legacy for India's climate movement by 2047, what would be the three pillars that you'd possibly say?
Number one, circularity. We can't think about climate action only as energy transition. It has to be actually being optimizing our resources again and again, whether it's land or water or biodiversity or minerals or metals. We have to think about climate action as circularity. Number two, one of the legacies India can leave behind is behavior change. Because what we are trying to do, developing while decarbonizing, is an imperative, and it is not something that the advanced economies of the world have done. They have had the luxury of development and now decarbonizing. You cannot do this only from a supply side approach. There are only that many gigawatts of solar and wind, etc. you can keep putting if you don't change the demand side equation. If you don't change what kind of cities we are trying to build, if you don't change what kind of homes we are trying to build, what kind of buildings we are trying to, hotels we are trying to operate in, etc. So that's number two. And number three is a legacy of risk-taking. And as I said, a celebration of failure. If we have a narrative that someone else has to develop technologies, and then we will just sit around and they will just hand over the technologies to us, then on what basis are we aspiring to be the world's fourth or third largest economy, or let alone a beacon for the global south? You have to be able to take risks, and risks come with pitfalls. So you can't have a narrative of we are fast-growing dynamic economy and not be able to take risks. See, cherry-picking individual technologies is not what we should be doing. The mantra I'm offering you is now go become a circular minerals economy or a circular water economy or circular whatever. Go figure out whether it's public transport or water efficiency or electricity inside the, change your behavior, or even the kind of clothes we wear. Go push for risk-taking from venture capitalists to what kind of government programs we design. How do we allow for government money also to come even if it's going to fail, right? If we start changing our mindsets that way, then we, again, create that ecosystem that is much more dynamic, and that, going back to one of the categories that Rupa was talking about, leverages the power of youth. Because if you're not going to back them, what's the point of celebrating that 60% of India is under 25? We've maintained over 15 years a median age of CEW staff of under 30, right through. I'm 15 years older, but we've maintained a median age under 30 throughout. Why? Because we've got to leverage the real resource that we have, which is the brain power of our population.
One climate myth you wish people would stop believing in. I know there could be many, which makes you think.
I think it's the one I said. It's not about the science. It is the real myth is, oh, we are doing all of this because someone else forced us to. It's the biggest disservice that a country of 1.5 billion people could be doing to itself.
Okay, also one book or maybe a documentary that changed your perspective on sustainability. Something that you'd also recommend people to read or watch.
I don't know, that's a hard one. There's so many. Maybe when I was a kid, I watched Born Free. And I was trying to find it again on YouTube. I can't find it. I wanted my daughter to watch it. It's not about because I decided to work on sustainability in that. But it's I don't know. It just triggered something of, one more. Watch at least the clip of the famous, late famous astronomer, Carl Sagan, when he describes Earth as a pale blue dot. That impacted me a lot. And those of you who might or might not know, it was when the Voyager spacecraft was just about to exit the solar system, and the NASA sent it signals, so it flipped the direction and faced towards Earth and took a photograph. And then Carl Sagan put it up and said that you basically see expanse of dark matter, some streaks, and within those streaks, a tiny pixel. And he said, that tiny pixel is Earth. And every human that has ever lived, every dream that has ever been dreamt, every tyrant and every pauper has all been on that one little pixel, right? So that's why I said, you know, the last lines of Tale of Two Cities, it's still the best thing that we have ever done. So that's what we got to do.
Okay, one last question. Your go-to metaphor for explaining climate urgency in public fora.
I will draw on actually something that Professor Nitin Desai once told me. Professor Nitin Desai was the UN Under Secretary General in 1992 when the Rio Conventions were signed. And he told me a few years ago, he said, Arunabha, in climate change, when you say it in Hindi, it is Jalvayu Parivartan. But that is meaningless. What does water wind change mean to anyone? Actually, we should be saying Vatavaran Asantulan. And I think he's absolutely right. Our Vatavaran is in Asantulan, the instability in our ambient environment. I would use that to explain what is going on, because that is our lived reality. Whether we are here and stuck in a flood, which is actually human-made, because the flood is a consequence of variation in the asantulan in our rainfall, which is anthropogenic climate change, but also our poorly planned cities. Right? But you can have the same conversation with a farmer of Vatavaran Asantulan.
Okay, so some questions, if you will. So anyone wants to ask questions, sir, please identify yourself and ask the question.
Thank you for the wonderful talk. I'm Yash Malik. I'm an ex-ONGCian. You very well covered energy transition in power sector. In addition, emission emitters are steel, cement, oil and gas. Do you see possibility of benchmarking of emissions from these sectors and making them pay for the excess emissions?
I think that's a great question, because as much as we celebrate solar or wind, etc., right now more than 80% of energy in India is non-electricity. So firstly, we have to electrify the economy and make sure that it's cleaner electrons. But you'll still have the heavy industries. Steel, cement, fertilizer, petrochemicals, aluminium, these account for 3/4 of industrial emissions from India. So at CEW, we did the first marginal abatement cost curves. For steel, it's over $200 billion of capex. For cement, it's over $300 billion of capex, about $3-4 billion of opex every year, to get to net zero for the industry as a whole. So how will an individual company move, right? I think we will need a carbon price. Without that, it'll just not happen, right? Because you can try and apply regulatory stakes, you can put in a CBAM, this, that, etc. Or you can say, some voluntary actions, etc. But without, again, back to your question, Ashu, that is the next market signal that policy ought to have. And you can ratchet up the carbon price over time, but it at least tells industry, the heavy industry. So you can't wish away, right? You still need steel. Even if you're making a Tesla, you'll still need steel for it, right? So it's very easy to wish away these challenges and, and finger point and blame heavy industry. But they are the bedrocks of the economy that we are in. Even as we should invest in alternative materials, etc. I think that is the minimum that we will need to move forward.
Okay, so we'll there, right behind. So just to mention, while we are taking the question, I'm just reminded of the numbers because I'm looking at them. 150 million tons or so of steel that India produces versus China, which is a little bit in the 1200 range. So almost 8x of India. That gives you an idea.
Gives you an idea, but also, we are the second largest steel producer in the world. Can we aspire to be the world's largest green steel producer in the world? No, you don't need a climate negotiation to have that aspiration.
Sir, good morning. I'm Dr. Sameer. I am basically an LPG distributor. Matlab, in the whole movement towards climate change, how do we incentivize a common middle class family who's staying in Delhi and suffering the price rise to contribute to the climate vulnerability reduction? Now, what is the how can we contribute a common man on the street? And for example, there's this technology from Germany, a small windmill that can produce around 500 watts of electricity. Now, how it can help people so that they can bring down their cost of living. I think if we can do something in this regard, we can achieve the fossil fuel free electricity production.
Yeah, I mean, whether cost of living is a challenge here, it's a challenge in Europe, it's a challenge in the US. Well, you talked about myths,
Yeah.
or asked me about myths. I think one of the myths we have to challenge is that climate action is costless. And again, sometimes we paint a narrative that is all kumbaya and it's all great and we'll all hold hands and sing. No, climate action is costly. Climate inaction, the real point we have to make, climate inaction is costlier. That is the, so for the household, right, yes, there is the here and now, but also today, suppose you were investing, you're a middle class household, thinking about buying a flat in, say, somewhere in Sona, beyond Gurgaon, right? You're putting your life savings into it, right? And what happens when the entire urban infrastructure collapses? What is the value of your property? Today, you can barely get insurance for homes in Florida. You can't get fire insurance for homes in California. There are $250 billion of annual losses happening. About almost 50% of annual losses from extreme weather events across the world is uninsured. It's in emerging markets like India. So when you think that climate action is, yes, it's, what do I do? You also have to think about what is the real cost to your life cycle income and earnings and savings that you're going to encounter. So now maybe not every household is thinking that way, but hang on, I disagree. Every household thinks when the day their child is born, how do I put money aside for their college education 18 years later? If we can have an 18-year horizon span for thinking about our children's education, if we have a 20-year, 30-year horizon for thinking about the house we will build, which we will then give to our children, who will then give it to our grandchildren, I refuse to believe that you also can't think about the real risks that are coming your way. That being said, your example of whether it's a decentralized wind turbine or solar panel, that again goes back to we have to create the power markets of the future. So the capex investment in something like that gives you a payback within 3 years, and you earn money off it. And as we have calculated, the DISCOM also earns money because it reduces transmission losses. Till we don't change those regulations in the power sector, this will seem like something separate, something feel good. I don't think climate action at scale can happen on a feel good basis.
Okay, we've run out of time. I'm sorry, we've run out of time completely, Dr. Ghosh. Possibly a few conversations offline we'll do. Okay.
Thank you, Ashok.
Thank you so much.
Well, let's put our hands together for this powerful conversation, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Ghosh and Mr. Sinha. Thank you so much. I'll request you to please stay on stage. May I please invite Ms. Davne to please join us on stage to present a token of our love and respect to Dr. Ghosh and to Mr. Sinha. Can we please get it on stage? And once again, thank you so much for joining us today, Mr. Ghosh, Dr. Ghosh and Mr. Sinha. And I request Ms. Davne. Let's put our hands together. We request, yes. Ms. Davne will request you to please present it to Mr. Sinha as well. Let's put our hands together. Thank you for steering the conversation, Mr. Sinha. Of course, you are the best, you're the expert that we have. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I'd first request my team to please put the chairs on stage for the next discussion. All right, while we get the stage ready for the next discussion, I would like to remind you that you can visit our website, which is www.earthcareawards.com, for more information on categories and eligibility details to register and submit your application. I hope you're already on it. All right. We get ready, ladies and gentlemen. So here's the centerpiece of today's event, the panel discussion on the theme, Climate Action at the Crossroads, Health, Livelihoods, and Equity for a Resilient Future. To steer this conversation, I would like to invite our moderator, Mr. Ajay Pandey, co-founder and partner at Think Through Consulting. In his journey as a sustainable development professional, Ajay has built expertise in the domains of natural resource management, climate change mitigation and adaptation, sustainable livelihoods, and social entrepreneurship. We are happy that he has joined us. Let's put our hands together as we welcome him. I would now like to invite our esteemed panelists on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we welcome Dr. Bhuvneshwari Balasubramanian, Country Director, Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, India. Dr. Bhuvneshwari holds a PhD in social sciences and brings significant experience in evidence-based, high-impact programs for food systems transformation with a strong nutrition lens. Thank you for joining us. Welcome on the stage, ma'am. Our next panelist for this discussion is Ms. Anumita Roy Chaudhary, Executive Director, Research and Advocacy, a recognized voice in national and global forums on air quality and climate change. She was awarded the prestigious Hagen-Smith Clean Air Award by the California Air Resources Board. Thank you for joining us for this panel discussion, ma'am. Let's put our hands together as to welcome her. And our next panelist for this discussion is Dr. Preeti Negandhi, Professor and Chair, JSW Center for Climate Change and Health Public Health Foundation of India. Professor Dr. Preeti Negandhi has a medical and public health background. She has previously worked in routine immunization with UNICEF Bihar, where she was actively involved in program planning and implementation as divisional coordinator. Thank you for joining us on panel, ma'am. And with this, I'd like to hand this over to Mr. Ajay Pandey, sir.
Thank you, Bhavna. And it's good to be back again this year when we talk about the 13th edition. This is kind of a launch event when we are having this first of the multi-city outreach events that we have planned. And as Rupa started this morning, this is the 13th edition of the EarthCare Awards, and every single edition of the EarthCare Awards we have been learning from the kind of innovations, the kind of risk that Dr. Arunabha also spoke about, something that really is a step forward in the direction that India as a country needs to take. And there are so many different ways it can be done, which is happening in different parts of the country. The idea of having these outreach event and having these kind of discussion in different cities is also to provide an opportunity, a platform to people and experts who have been working relentlessly through their organization, individually as well, looking at the challenge of climate change, climate action, looking at the issue of resilience, looking at the issue of mitigation and adaptation. And therefore, I think it has been quite a long time since we are back in Delhi. So looking forward to this exciting panel discussion. It is always going to be a difficult time, after Ashu and Dr. Arunabha, the way they, spoke and the kind of excitement that they have built. But I'm sure with the eminence present here on this dais, we'll be able to, go through and have a much meaningful and fruitful discussion, maybe, learn from that. So the topic today is climate action at the crossroads. And crossroads, what you see here written is health, livelihoods, and equity. But there is more. There is more to it. There is biodiversity. There is gender. There is education. Everything is at a crossroad because, climate action does not, it is not sector specific. When we look at climate change and the impact of climate change, it affects everyone. So when we, look at this particular topic of how we build resilience, looking into the interaction of all these different sectors, as climate change today is not just an environmental issue, it is a far-reaching systemic challenge impacting human health, nutrition, cities, ecosystem, social equity all at once. From rising heat stress and vector-borne disease to climate-induced migration and vulnerabilities of marginalized communities, the risk landscape has become complex and deeply intertwined. As a country, we navigate this rapidly evolving climate reality. Our discussion recognizes that the solutions too must be multidimensional because the problem itself manifests in different forms. Today we will examine how these diverse sectors can work together to build a resilient future that protects health, sustains livelihood, and advances social equity. Just yesterday and before yesterday, I was, meeting someone, and the topic. Somebody asked some question, and there was this very senior global economist who was doing a lecture, and there was questions asked about what is currently happening in the North India, the floods, the situation of floods, and how this is going to impact the farmers. And in the response, he mentioned about, this is the problem of today and tomorrow. And I think that is something which kind of set the tone. What we are doing today is going to impact tomorrow, and whether we are proofing our tomorrow in a manner which, you know, which kind of, you know, how that is going to impact today. So it's a cyclical relationship. And the issue of climate change is primarily around that, whether we talk about food systems, whether we talk about health systems, whether we talk about the environmental systems, the cities, the urban planning, all those aspects, how this is actually, you know, kind of cascading in terms of the impact, and then, you know, ultimately how we can build resilience around it. We are fortunate to have with us Dr. Bhuvaneshwari Balasubramaniam from GAIN, Professor Preeti Negandhi from Public Health Foundation of India, and Anumita Roy Chaudhary from the Center of Science and Environment, and we'll hear their perspective as practitioners, what they bring in, practical sector-specific action points, as well as systemic changes needed to effectively respond to the climate crisis. Without any further ado, I would like to get down to the moderation. But again, for everyone present here, I would really request you to spread the word about EarthCare Awards, the categories, the 6 categories that Rupa had presented earlier. We have this new category this year which has been added, which is the communicators for climate action. In the past, we have seen that using different communication channels, communication mediums through art, through visuals, through photography, through literature, and even through social media and blogs, people have communicated and kind of balance the science and the art of climate change. Of course, we are looking at non-fiction and not fictional stories and greenwashing, as Dr. Arunabha also mentioned. So please spread the word, and I'll just start with the panel. Yeah. So I'll start with Bhuvna. And in fact, what I will do as a first round, from your vantage point, and I'll go one by one, maybe all of you. From your vantage point, what is the most urgent and frequently overlooked climate risk that India faces, especially looking in the sector that you are currently operating? So maybe we start from Bhuvna and then Anumita and Dr. Preeti.
Thanks, Ajay. Firstly, congratulations, EarthCare Awards team, and good luck for the award season. Thanks for having me here. GAIN, we are passionate about promoting the right kind of food that results in better nutrition and health outcomes. So for us, from a climate point of view, what we are interested is that climate mitigation action intentionally involves the conversation around food and nutrition. We do know that globally, about 1/3 of GHG emissions are a result of food production-linked activities, which is significantly lower in India. I was just quickly doing a research on it. Over the last couple of decades, we've been able to reduce the GHG emissions from agri and allied sectors in India. But what troubles us, at least in the Indian context, is there is quite a bit of recognition that climate is affecting agriculture and agricultural production. We are witnessing that even today as we speak. And there's a lot of action that's happening. For instance, the whole climate resilient agriculture approach, the agroecological approach, and so to speak. There's a lot of work that's happening around this, and we are seeing that even yesterday's FAO conversation indicated that since COVID, food production has increased in India by 10%. And we've been able to increase production without significant expansion of land use as compared to, say, African countries. This shows innovations in agriculture, practices, etc. But for us, what is troublesome is that this production does not link to consumption and the resulting nutrition and health outcomes. So we call this the missing middle. There is food production, but that food production does not translate to consumption. Where are we missing out? post-harvest focus is something that I think we need to really focus on in terms of reduction of food loss and nutrition loss. There are opportunities for innovations around this, and I hope, I mean, I'll be watching the awards also closely. There are potential cold storage solutions, for instance, that are more decentralized, that are more cost efficient. How do we link the post-harvest, what is grown in a demography, to what is being consumed? Because it's a balancing act. There's also livelihood. There's also the geopolitical requirements of imports and exports and all of that. But we miss out on nutrition outcomes if we are not talking about growing diverse food that's both climate and nutrition resilient, and having access to local markets to promote consumption of that food for people who need that the most. But I'll stop here and maybe unpack it later.
Oh, thank you. Anumita.
Thank you so much for asking that question. Because someone like me, who's been working on clean air issues now for past 30 years, today we realize at this cross-section the intersectionality of clean air and climate change, something that we just missed completely for the last few decades. And it is so important to recognize that connection today, that we have understood that it is not possible to keep these two challenges of air pollution and climate change in silos. And we need to understand the interface. And the reason being that, so when we think about air pollution, we consider this something very local, something in my immediate surrounding, which is true, okay? What we are burning, what is the combustion, the waste, the dust. And climate change, we keep something that is distant, global, okay? It's very remote from where we are. It's only when we are hit by floods, when we are hit by drought and heat waves, then we realize, okay, it's also coming home. But the importance of understanding the science of air pollution and climate change is so critical today that the same pollutants that we breathe that harm our health, they are also heat trappers. So the black carbon from diesel or incomplete combustion is trapping heat, and it has a much more warming potential than CO2. But it is short-lived. But as long as it is in the atmosphere, it is trapping heat and warming up while harming me. Waste burning, we are so worried about because what's doing it to our health. But the methane from waste is also a heat trapper. Now, the moment you begin to realize this, then it's a very important and powerful policy message, because if, therefore, global warming emissions, the heat trapping emissions, and the public health harming emissions, we have to deal with all of them together, then the principle of co-control is very critical, because it is the same source, the same vehicle, the industry stacks, the power plants burning, the same source is emitting all of them. So if we have to look at it from the perspective of policy and investments, then internalizing and mainstream the indicators of co-benefit, not only of control, but also the livelihood spin-off, the job spin-off, if we can bring all of that together, then we maximize the benefit, and that's the change in our approach that needs to come in now.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Son.
So, thank you. Thank you so much for the question. Thank you, JSW and Times of India, for inviting me to this panel discussion. I'm going to take off from where Anumita talked about clean air and its connect with climate change. Climate change affects our city landscape, our food, our agriculture, our ecosystems, but directly or indirectly, it's all related to health, one way or the other. So in terms of health, what are the challenges that we must immediately address? One is, of course, air pollution, and the other is heat. Air pollution, of course, you've talked about a lot of factors that are contributing to air pollution, but one that I would like to focus on is indoor air pollution, because a lot of rural and low-income urban households are still relying on wood and cow dung and crop residue for their cooking and heating purposes. So women and young children who are spending a lot of time at home are the most vulnerable to this indoor air pollution. And as we all know that this has harmful health effects in terms of chronic respiratory illnesses, cardiovascular illnesses, and even cataracts. So maybe switching to cleaner cooking fuels will not only help health, but also reduce deforestation, also help reduce carbon emissions. So that indoor air pollution is one urgent health challenge that maybe we should look at in the context of climate change. And the other one is, of course, our frequent and extreme heat waves, heat events that we are experiencing across the country. And again, heat has its effects on multiple systems across in health. So we have heat exhaustion to heat strokes to a lot of documented evidence that suggests that heat is actually killing us. The problem is we don't see it happening in front of us, therefore we think it's not happening. So I completely agree with her point. Whatever is happening next to us and very close to us in our vicinity, we see, we know. But something that is far away, we think, okay, we'll not take it too seriously. But I think these are the two health challenges that we should definitely address immediately. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Preeti. There was, when the fireside chat was going on about climate change and whether we recognize climate change as a problem or not, there was this tune which was just going on, Dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. So when things are good, when things are going, when you don't see anything. So for example, Delhi has been reeling under air pollution for quite some time now, and everyone is talking about air pollution, and then why air pollution is happening. It's not just Delhi, and you may like to speak more about it, but I see that's happening across North India. So there is something environmental, something ecological, something special in that phenomena, which I find mostly along the Gangetic Plain. And then people compare Mumbai and say that Mumbai is good because we have sea breeze and everything. And I went to Mumbai and I saw there's a huge cloud of fog in Mumbai in the winters. So there is, this, when you find it distant, you think that it's not my problem, but when you start looking at it, nobody was thought of having, now people are started about Gurgaon as the flooded city and, making memes and jokes around it. But this was making, it was happening, it was in process when the planning started. So yeah, that was going on. So I'll come back to you, Dr. Bhuvna. You spoke about food systems and the kind of missing middle that you mentioned, production and consumption, and how the middle is missing in terms of the. So, as you mentioned, food systems are facing increasing climate shocks, from crop losses to price volatility, and that is also kind of creating a risk in terms of the consumption pattern and creating what should be on the plate while we are producing, but whether it is reaching there or not. And that threatens nutritional security. So what practical steps do you believe can strengthen the local food systems and ensure they remain affordable as well as diverse and resilient as this risk intensifies, the climate risk intensifies?
So 3 aspects you touched upon: affordability, diversity, and resilience. I think resilience is the need of the hour across the board, be it any challenge that we're facing. And solutions often lie at the intersection of this. Like you address the availability of the right kind of food with a food systems approach. You address affordability, diversity, and resilience. And by that, I mean, when we're saying, what's the link between food production and climate? Climate shocks affect how much food productivity happens, like what kind of food is produced, how much is it produced, and how that gets affected. We know that given the rate at which climate shocks continue to affect food production, we know that there's going to be less food available and it's going to become more expensive. That means vulnerable populations are going to lean on social protection programs more for their basic foods. We also know that the nutrient content of the food is also going to be affected, be it because of soil quality, poor soil quality as a result of the agriculture practices, be it because of heat and extreme weather conditions. We know that nutrient quality is also going to get affected. So the actual quantity, which is the macros, is also going to be impacted, and also the micronutrients. And we also know that there is also a rise in obesity, and obesity is because of overconsumption of the wrong kinds of foods, right? So what practical solutions? I feel different partners have to come together for this. From a government point of view or from a policy point of view, we're already seeing that, with the declaration of 2023 as the year of the millets, there was a huge push for pseudo cereals across the country, to such an extent that there were brands that were exclusively dealing with, millet-based products. Now, it has its flip side as well. Suddenly, something that was largely consumed by, the rural population, fed to their cattle, it's no longer affordable to them because there is a niche market that's evolving. So the production is not catching up to the demand, supply and demand, right? So that's one option. So you're looking at promotion of the right kind of commodities or foods. And that's where the whole diversity comes in. If you look at any state, the major crop that's grown is either paddy or wheat. And both of these are resource intensive. There's now a push towards pseudo cereals, but we need to do so much more in terms of pulses, in terms of horticulture. So intervention at promoting foods that are native to that region. There are fruits that are native and seasonal to every region, which we need to be intentional about promoting that. And a food systems lens affords that. We look at what's indigenous to that region, what is the soil quality like that informs what can be grown, what's the climatic condition, and what needs to be grown as a result of that, and how do you ensure that what is grown has, the axis of it, where does the food travel? Does it travel within the ecosystem? Do the farmers also eat what is being produced? Is there opportunity for domestic market linkages, value additions, all of those? So how the food environment also plays a role in terms of the access and affordability. If you're able to look at decentralized solutions, building capacities at an FPO and SHG level, we bring down costs significantly for processing, the immediate processing post-harvest. And it has certain environmental implications as well. So the whole, right from farm, how the food travels, if we are intentional about how this should be available for the right population group that actually needs that lens of looking at it from a food system approach is important. From a private sector, and I think now it's a timely discussion where with the GST being cut significantly for food businesses, how does this translate in terms of what food is being provided by FMCGs, right? There are different ways that benefit can be forwarded to the consumer. A, it's the cut in an MRP, the MRP is reduced. B, there is more for the money that is being paid. C is, can we look at opportunities for product reformulation? Looking at locally produced ingredients, looking at healthier alternatives, reducing of salt, sugar, and fat in the FMCG products that are being produced. It makes sense in a lot of ways. It makes sense for the brand from a larger picture of building brand loyalty. If I am somebody who is making cookies, if I can cut down on the fat and sugar of my cookies, and if I can advertise that, I create a niche follower for my own brand that I'm doing, right? And it makes business ethics sense as well. So how are FMCG going to piggyback on this opportunity of the GST cut? The other is from their own business point of view, it makes sense given the ESG regulations and given product reformulation can and should be reported under the ESG of to inform that, yes, we're running a business, but we're also being conscious of what my business does to the larger population. And as a result, I am doing XYZ to make my product line healthy. And there's this strong proponent of how the environment, the E part of it, is exciting for investors. So should the nutritious product portfolio for investors should also be exciting. So there is an opportunity from the private sector as well. And of course, there's the consumer behavior. And consumer behavior is the most interesting, the most complicated and exciting part about it, because none of us choose foods as a result of just how much it is priced or as a result of how healthy it is. None of us do that.
So we choose based on taste.
We choose
primarily,
based on the
and
emotion that
cultural,
it provides.
yeah.
Yes, the culture, yes, absolutely. What has my mom given me? What do I find aspirational? Who do I relate to who's consuming that food product? Multiple things influence that. So, the whole idea of how do we create nudges learning from food businesses to nudge it towards healthier diets. And that's a role that everybody plays in the ecosystem.
Right. And, just if in 1 minute, if you can also, have a follow-up question to what you said. So food system is a combination of the entire journey of food. But if you look at production system, earlier you would get only seasonal vegetables in the market. So cauliflower, you will get only in a particular season. I remember my mother used to, keep those cauliflowers and dry it in the sun so that it can be used sometime else. Now you are getting it throughout the year. Now this is also because, due to fertilizers and due to microclimatic treatments, but this is kind of increasing the carbon footprint for each and every crop. Now, when you talk about diversity, I think, and then I just want you to answer that, whether we should be going back to more traditional way of farming, which is culturally rooted, or we should go for more advanced and technical, or a balance of both?
I would say a balance of both. And it's not something that should come from any of us in this room. It should come from the solutions need to come from the people who are growing it. So I would say any farmer makes a decision of what crop they're growing based on what yield it promises and how much would that fetch in terms of money for taking care of themselves, their own livelihoods and their survival. So for us to sit and say that it should go back to traditional ways, I think might be misplaced. Our solutions have to come from ground up, and it has to be a balance of both. And I don't think we need to compromise on either or. Should we look at a balance? We can look at promoting diverse foods, horticulture, fruits, vegetables, climate resilient, nutrition resilient, traditional varieties, with innovations that look at high yield, that look at efficient agri practices that are agroecological, and still look at scale. That's possible, and that's what we should move towards.
Okay. So that was a provocative question, meant because what Dr. Arun Nabha, I don't think he's here, but what he mentioned, the metaphor in the end, Vatavaran Asantulan, ecological instability, and I'll come to you, Dr. Preeti. You mentioned about heat stress, indoor pollution, which also leads to respiratory illness, and also a lot of vector-borne disease linked to climate change. I just wanted to add, because the kind of food that we are eating, there's a lot more cases of cancer which is being diagnosed in India. Nobody knows why this is the case, but now it has really, there has been a spurt. And in Punjab, we have seen that there has been some documented case studies because of excessive fertilizer usage and you're producing everything throughout the year, and you're using a lot of those foreign elements into the soil. So, I just wanted to keep that in mind, but, based on what you mentioned as, increase in these heat stress, respiratory illness, vector-borne disease, they're all linked to climate change. What immediate action should our health system focus on, especially to protect the vulnerable population from this emerging and intensifying risk? What are those top three priority area for the health system to tackle these kind of challenges? Because these were not part of our traditional health infrastructure. There's something which is emerging.
Yeah, thank you. So, see, climate change is not a distant threat. It's a present reality. It's already there, and we need to be cognizant of that. With respect to health systems, I'd say that one thing that we can definitely, our health systems can adapt to is by building and strengthening our surveillance network, our early warning systems. Because we already have a network of surveillance, but we need to strengthen it further and make it more robust. And also make it reach out to, at the district level where we can have predictive, sort of predictions where we can predict, say, rainfall, floods, rising temperatures. So our surveillance, if it is very strong, that can definitely help, make our health system strong. The other point is building climate resilient health infrastructure. So we have a national program on climate change and human health, which is working towards building green climate resilient health infrastructure and also building capacities of healthcare professionals, because we need, say things like solarization, which Dr. Ghosh was talking about. Health facilities are being solarized, there's talk about it, but we need it, the number of health facilities we have across the country, we'll need much more that needs to be done in that area. We can have mobile health units, which are also taking care of heat-related illnesses. So there are mobile health units taking care of other diseases, but we need them more for health-related and climate-related illnesses as well. Our facilities need to have, let us say, dedicated heat stroke units. So in the summer months, we can predict that we are going to have patients coming in with heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and then their management needs to be taken care of. So our infrastructure needs to be ready and prepared to tackle these issues, these problems. And last but not the least, I'd say community engagement is a very crucial link here, because health systems is working in its silos so far, but we'll need to give it a more multi-sectoral lens and approach. But bringing the community into the picture and, starting with something very small at a community level, something like, let's say, when we know that there's going to be a surge in dengue and malaria cases after floods or after heavy rainfall, something as simple as anti-larval spraying, fogging in your neighborhoods, in your communities, maybe in schools, that can be led by communities. So if there's an integration of, the public health strategy and community engagement, that can work wonders. So top three, I think these would be the top three. Yeah.
Good ones. Thank you. Anumita, you mentioned about air pollution and that this is not a distinct or distinct from the effects of climate change. You also mentioned about waste and land use change, which continues to strain both ecosystem and communities. Again, going back to kind of solutions, what, in your experience, cost-efficient and community-driven solutions, especially if you're looking like city like Delhi, Gurgaon, or NCR, do you see as most effective in protecting our habitat and reducing these kind of risks?
Absolutely. So let's look at it this way, whether clean air or climate action. What are the three big things or the solutions that we want to see scaled up and something that really builds momentum with speed. One, clearly what we discussed in the last session on the energy transition, you need circularity and you need mobility transition, right? So all these three planks of action going to give you the big answer to climate change and clean air. Now the question is that today in India, in all these sectors, policies have progressed quite a bit. Not only that, along with policies, we have come up with fiscal instruments, government funding program, performance-linked funding. All of these have begun to take shape. But there is still that last mile, and that last mile is the community absorption of solution. Whether that's is happening at a scale and the way it's needed. So while we have to focus a lot on upscaling the infrastructure and systems development for which the policies and funding strategies are taking shape, but at the same time, the community absorption of solution is the most critical part. Now, when I say that, let's try and understand. So there is the whole infrastructure development around waste management with Swachh Bharat Mission, all of that is happening. Now let's understand that what does community action mean? That where, because of your awareness, you want to take individual action or community level action, but that also needs to be enabled with your access to the understanding of the solution, access to the requisite technology and design for you personally to implement, your access to data and how are you being enabled, and the pricing signals that being sent to you to change your behavior. All of these have to come in place. Now to give you a quick example, today another pollution, that is the water pollution. And Yamuna today in Delhi is the most talked about. Yeah. Understand that 70% of Yamuna's pollution comes only from Delhi. And in Delhi, only two drains, Najafgarh and Shadra drain. 80% of Yamuna's pollution from Delhi is going through these two drains, right? How do you deal with it? Unless you have the decentralized systems in the institutions, in campus, in apartment blocks to intercept that wastewater, recycle, and completely reuse that water, and minimize your dependence on the municipal sewer, the network, right? That kind of revolution is needed today at community level. Similarly, when you talk about solid waste management, and we have seen great examples in Indore, Bhopal, where through household segregation and then material recovery at the municipal level, they have been able to remediate legacy waste in the landfill, and landfill areas have been reclaimed as green areas. Now, understand the power of that change. But that will be possible if community is enabled. So I can say I want to walk and cycle. I want to take public transport. Yes, I can make those individual choices. But if we are not investing in integrated public transport, if you're not doing fair integration to reduce my journey cost, if you're not giving me the last mile connectivity, walking and cycling infrastructure, even with best of my intention, I'm not going to make that switch. Similarly, in the energy transition, look at the individual connect. Very recently, we did a study which showed in Delhi how electricity demand, it just escalates like mad during summer because of heat, and then heat and humidity, both combined. That creates the heat distress. Now, if all of our cumulative action of just depending on air conditioner, only that is contributing about 67% of the increase in the electricity demand during summer. Now, if we have to individualize this at a household level, understand the investment that we need to make in improving the thermal comfort of our building, therefore the kind of architectural design, material, etc. we are selecting, the energy efficient appliances that we need to use. So all of that, therefore, to translate that big level change to the micro neighborhood scale change and individual level scale, that will have to be enabled. So the centralized decision making backed with bottom up decentralized action, that's where we need to go.
That's a very, very exciting, steps that you mentioned. And I was just thinking, like Earth hour that everyone switches off the light for 1 hour. I was just thinking whether CSE has done some or plans to do some kind of research with air conditioning. If we switch off the air conditioner for 1 hour in the peak summer, what is the kind of what is going to be the net effect? Because I think air conditioning has really solved the heat problem individually, but has escalated, multiplied the challenge so many fold. So have you ever done something?
You know, you're so right. You're absolutely right. You know what I always say? Two modern inventions, air conditioner and cars.
Yeah.
Air conditioners have completely changed the way we design our buildings today, and the cars have changed the way we design our cities today. So, because you know that you have an air conditioner, so you can have a building that is just closed from all sides, not connected with the climate and weather outside. You cannot leverage the cool climate, nice breeze outside sometimes because you just have to keep your building closed so that you can have air conditioner 24/7 for 365 days. Now that is the biggest mistake that we can ever make. India has such amazing climate opportunities. Yes, use your air conditioner when you are feeling uncomfortable. But that's in the afternoon, maybe midnight, but not 24 hours. And you can continue to reduce the need for air conditioned hours by changing the design of the building, the material, insulation, air, and the district cooling systems. There are so many methods.
Absolutely.
And making cooling just not the rich man's privilege, but also an affordable thermal comfort access by the lower income groups as well. So you need a paradigm shift there to be able to make the change. So air conditioner is inevitable, but not inevitable for all the time and all the hours during the day. And that's where we have to intervene, therefore. So when you're constructing a building, you have to ensure that you're reducing the thermal load on the building through all these changes. All your EIAs, your impact assessments will have to be done, and your building has to be then, you need to go for a disclosure system and disclose how much of electricity are you using annually, and then take corrective measures to reduce that electricity consumption. So the solutions are available, but understanding of the solution and then uptake of the solutions are very limited.
Yeah. So I'll start the third round with you only, Anvita. You have mentioned about a solution that would have a far-reaching effect, but how do we actually? So let's say we want to build. I mean, it's more about behavioral change. It's more about understanding, sensitivity, but it also requires a lot of effort from the policymakers. There has to be, unless and until there is policies around it. But when we talk about policy, and because we are at the crossroads, policy convergence is often easier said than done. So, from your perspective, what might be a true system thinking approach here to climate action when we are looking at, effectively integrating health, food, energy, biodiversity, all of those things, buildings, all those things together. So, and you have been working for the last 30 years, and there's a lot that CSE has done, and a lot of what CSE has done has also been reflected, and there has been action by the government as well.
It's the word that you've used, convergence. That is central to everything that we want to do now in terms of policy, implementation, and funding. And the reason why I'm saying this is that today, when we are looking at it from whatever prism you look at it, maybe let me take clean air at this moment, that today when in India, so many different sectoral policies and funding strategies are evolving, again, don't keep them in silos. It is so important to have the convergence of all this to deliver on the objectives, all the objectives that we have just discussed. Now, let me give a very concrete example. So, India today has a national clean air program, and under that, close to 10,000 crore have already been spent. Okay? But 10,000 crores spent, now how much has it really contributed to us cleaning up the air? Now, when you look at how that money has been spent, then you realize about 64% of that has gone only in dust control, which means you've just been sweeping the roads with sweeping machines. Now, is that all we need to do to clean up the air? And yet, while we have to fix that, we need to reform that strategy. But do not underestimate the power of all other sectoral programs that are in place in a city that are contributing to clean air objective. Let me give you one concrete example again. Take Srinagar. Srinagar under National Clean Air Program got about 90 crore, of which they may have spent about 45%. So very small amount spent for clean air. But at the same time, Srinagar got 900 crore under Smart City Program, with which they have transformed their streets, the walkable streets, electric buses, the boats on Jhelum, and a whole lot of mobility changes that have taken place. Now look at it. So if I look at it only from what they have spent under National Clean Air Program, you will not really find much contribution to the objective of cleaning up the air. But if I combine in any city what they have spent under Swachh Bharat Mission to deal with their waste, under Smart City Mission on urban planning and smart management of urban systems, and all of these together, if you combine, then they are continuously contributing to what you want to achieve. Now make this more deliberate and explicit in your policies. And you have to integrate all these indicators now, the performance indicators, into any funding, any sectoral policy to ensure that you have got convergence, alignment, and synergy. That's the way to move forward, to maximize gains from all the investments that we're making today.
Thank you. Dr. Preeti, again, on this same issue of integration, convergence, what would a climate-smart health surveillance system for India look like? Particularly when you are anticipating the responding to health impacts of climate change, vector-borne outbreak, or urban heat stress.
I would like to say that we already are getting climate smart with respect to health surveillance systems. You must have heard about the Integrated Disease Surveillance Program, which is Government of India's health program that is capturing real-time information about cases of communicable diseases, airborne, waterborne, foodborne, certain risk factors for non-communicable diseases, and now also including health-related illnesses and climate change-related illnesses. And the IDSP program is very closely working with the National Program on Climate Change and Human Health. So the main objective of this program is to, like I said, capture real-time data so that they can estimate disease burden, monitor the trends in disease, and early detection of any disease outbreaks, because that's the whole point of surveillance. But that is the health system part of it, and we know that climate change is not just the business of the health sector. We're needing convergence from many other partners. So, if we could get, let's say, the IMD to predict, they're already doing it. They're predicting rainfalls, they're predicting floods, increase in temperatures. But if that can be communicated timely to the health sector, the authorities are going to actually make the difference at the ground level, the community health workers, the health facility, medical officers, etc., then timely action can be taken. So that can be one way they can converge. Add to that, let's say, GIS technology, which we have now. So you can probably create dynamic risk maps where you have an overlay of climate vulnerability, population density, the health infrastructure, and you can identify hotspots where, diseases are coming up, surges are coming up, or likely to come up in the next 1 week, 5 days, 3 days. And then you can do something about it again, timely. We have AI, we have machine learning, so you can use that technology to, say, analyze patterns of rising temperatures, hospital visits, and the intersection of the two. Because then you can probably have something like heat stress risk indices, which will allow you to understand how many heat-related illness patients are likely to come to the hospital in the coming days. Delhi has experienced a huge downpour last week. IMD would have, given out warnings, early warnings, saying that we're going to have floods and we're going to have this problem. But how did the health sector use that information to prepare itself for the cases coming in? So now, this week, there would be an expectation to see a surge in dengue cases or malaria cases or leptospirosis cases. That is the kind of preparedness and that is the kind of convergence that we're talking about. And of course, then we have our community engagement as well, which I talked about. So if we bring all of this together, I think slowly and surely we're getting there. It will take time, but we do need multi-sectoral approach to make it happen. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Dr. Preeti. So, Bhuvna, again, from a food system lens, how could we integrate climate and nutrition goal, overcoming the traditional siloed approaches when specifically when you're talking about nutrition, because nutrition is mostly looked from a health angle. We have a Ministry of Health and Nutrition and Family Welfare, but nutrition is mostly seen as part of that. There is agriculture, there is horticulture, there is fishery, there is so many different departments working again. So how do we bring convergence there? How do we bring interdepartmental coordination there?
That's a tough one. We call nutrition a nobody's child because it doesn't sit comfortably within any ministry. You have WCD, you have the list that you shared, and all of them contribute to nutrition, but nobody contributes to nutrition intentionally except for maybe WCD and health. And that's where the gap is, because WCD and health come at the final phase, which is the consumption and post-consumption outcomes. When you look at a food systems approach, where you have food production, food environment, how food travels, the markets, where you get access, affordability, etc., the consumption and the outcome. So the last two is where WCD and health would come in very strongly. The rest are all probably in the behavior change communication angle is where they're leveraged, but not from an intervention angle. So for us, how we're seeing this is that climate and environment has to be a cross-cutting area across the programmatic intervention in the food systems. And by that we mean, and just to sort of rewind it a little bit, we've done something called as a ICANN mapping, a subnational mapping in India, subsequent to the initiative that we launched at COP27 in Egypt, where we wanted to see across the policies in climate, how much does the climate policies in terms of mitigation, adaptation, etc., how much are they talking about nutrition and how intentional are they talking about nutrition? Are there KPIs, are there investments, or is it an afterthought or an implied benefit? Similarly, in terms of the nutrition policies across India, different states, how much are they talking about climate and how intentional are they? And we found that the linkage or the integration is very poor. The opportunity for integration for this was very strong when you position it within agriculture, because with agriculture center stage and with the conversation around climate resilient agriculture significantly growing, can we layer nutrition sensitive climate resilient agriculture? Because very often climate resilient is also nutrition sensitive, because you go into traditional practices, because you go into indigenous commodities and things like that. So that's one way of bringing together climate and nutrition together in a conversation. But like what Mr. Chaudhary was talking about, from a programmatic lens, it has to be cross-cutting. We can no longer afford to look at an intervention within its silo. For instance, a social protection program, like distribution of THR to ICDS. It has to go beyond just the whole idea of training an SHG worker to produce THR and send it. It has to look at what goes into it and as an ingredient. How can we locally procure those sources? How can they be a more nutritious variety? How can we promote the farmer communities to produce it in more climate resilient ways? So that is the kind of conversation we are having, where across programmatic or intervention areas, you're looking at the intersection of climate, but I would also add two more angles. One is the whole gender angle, because climate affects food systems, it affects women significantly more and in significantly different ways compared to men. The other angle that I would say is also to keep the idea of reaching the very poor center stage, because vulnerability in terms of access and affordability is a very strong concern. So when we're talking integration, we are talking across the markets. Produce those that are climate and nutrition resilience, create post-harvest technologies, solutions that are more efficient, both in terms of energy use and in terms of reducing nutrition loss, promote consumption or availability of nutritious foods. And if that sort of chain follows, then with a gender and a vulnerability lens, then you're looking at an ecosystem that protects its vulnerable, that protects its environment, and that promotes healthier foods.
Right. Thank you, Bhuvna, for summarizing that. And maybe we can have some questions from the audience. Any questions for the panelists? Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Tarun Valecha. I'm an architect. More than a question, just a thought, and maybe I can get your views on it. We were just talking about when ma'am said about Yamuna, main pollution coming from Najafgarh Nala, and unfortunately, this is not a new story. We've been seeing this for now probably a couple of decades. It is so apparent that you don't have to get data from anywhere, just look at Google and it will show you one black stream merging into a green stream at the point where Najafgarh Nala comes in. Further, ma'am also mentioned about, as an architect, my things come more about built spaces. So, we spoke about air conditioning. Yes, the responsibility lies with architects, but then maybe somewhere following the trends, we've kind of failed ourselves, making all the glass buildings and then trying to bring in heavier air conditioning. So it's a dichotomy. But if the laws were to come in, and maybe some kind of such mandate where just by the design, we have building bylaws which are, we all know, very weak, and implementation is further weaker. So while we talk about these concerns with all good intentions at this platform, I feel we need a lot to come in from the authorities. Whether it is ensuring, Najafgarh Nala is not happening on its own. Somebody's, throwing in stuff day in and out into it, and we all know if we are turning a blind eye. If the air conditioning is happening because the buildings are not being designed like that. So shouldn't we also engage more deeply with the authorities and get implementations and authorities and laws in place? Because no matter what happens, we'll keep failing, because human greed will keep asking for the easier way out. Unless we have, adequate laws and adequate implementation, I'm not sure if we'll really make any headway. So just my thought.
So it's a thought, but do you want to respond to that?
That's a very important point that you have raised, really, because we are seeing spate of rules and regulations with the Energy Conservation Building Code, the new Sustainability Code, and all norms changing all the time. But what we find that they do not really get translated into clear mandate. First of all, the municipalities and the municipal bylaws don't get amended based on that. So when the building approval is happening, all of that's happening, then these remain guidelines, more discretionary. And therefore, the uptake of this is very critical. Even the municipalities do not have adequate capacity also to ensure that the basic building design and the techniques that we are talking about, that there is a certain uptake of that. So absolutely you're right, and therefore we need to find ways of how do we make that implementable. But there are other means, because you see, one is the regulatory method. Another is where the governments are also incentivizing the construction industry, giving them extra FSI, FAR, if you become a green building. But accountability on that is very poor, it's not, and the even if you have accountability at the time of designing it, but the post-construction performance is not tracked adequately. So we also need to bring in those changes that must happen. And also the responsibility does not lie only with the architect, as you said. So it's everything, the structural system of the building, but at the same time, we must never lose sight of the role of the urban planning and the building interface. So you also need the building and the outside space where you will be doing your greening and your other to reduce the overall heat island effect around the structures that you are creating. All of these things now matter. Now, while we have all these rules and the understanding of this, but how do you translate that into an implementable framework? So when Telangana says, do cool roof across all buildings and give support for that, so that becomes scalable. But that's one kind of intervention. But how do you get the complexity of the design, structure, material all packed in to enable the thermal comfort in buildings? That certainly remains a challenge. We have to address that.
Again, this also brings the convergence angle because one department may call for something, but then it's a mix of, in Delhi, for example, if you're building a house, you need to take approval from several bodies. And you have somewhere you have rainwater harvesting now, not in Delhi but in other places, solar panels on rooftop. So there are different policies where people are not aware about it because there is not much that is being said. But also, those departments, DDA, MCD, it's really very, very bureaucratic, and to maneuver all those approvals, there is need to do ease of those operations. So, yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Wonderful listening to all of you. My name is Rajiv Khurana and I'm the founder trustee of Lung Care Foundation. We have an initiative called Doctors for Clean Air and Climate Action. You started with the statement, Dukh mein simran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. But my confusion is, where is the sukh time? Because air pollution is around the year. And the trouble is, the dual statement applied to us. Yatha Raja Tatha Praja and Yatha Praja Tatha Raja. तो किसी शायर ने जो बात कही है, मैं उसकी शायरी की थोड़ी सी टांग तोड़ के बोलना चाहता हूँ कि दोनों तरफ है आग बराबर बुझी हुई, कुछ वो बेखबर हैं, कुछ हमको नहीं खबर. अब मैं आपको एक रियलिटी बाइट देना चाहता हूँ. With one of the large states of India, we presented to the minister what should be done on the health aspect vis-a-vis air pollution. And he says, Khurana ji, बहुत अच्छी बात करते हैं, proposal दीजिए. So we gave a detailed proposal, detailed presentation. अगली मीटिंग में मैं अपनी secretaries के साथ बात करके आपके साथ बात करूँगा. I said, wonderful. So we went there with all preparation and expectation, and he says, सचिवों से बात की है, पर वो ये सोचते हैं कि अगर हमें डेवलपमेंट चाहिए तो एक पीढ़ी को तो योगदान देना पड़ेगा. That means another 20 years we are going to be suffering of all the issues related to air pollution and health because the development is at stake and we really cannot visualize the balancing of the two. So I have two quick questions, sir. Number one, how do we bring about change in this mindset on both the aspects, the government and the public? And second, when do we as organizers think in terms of conducting these workshops beyond the 5-star ambience? Because Delhi also has 3 hill stations. And if we can stand there in the foothills of those Kachra hill stations, we'll be much more closer to reality to think in terms of solutions. I look forward to the answers, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm not qualified enough to answer your first question in terms of how do we send the mindset. I think you are much more qualified and experienced to think of an answer. But since you have asked the question, I will definitely give it a try. And I think based on my own limited experience of around 25 years, I have seen a lot of change in the mindset that has already happened. Uh, the policy makers, when I meet the principal secretaries who are there today, these were the district collectors, young IAS officers. When I started my career, I used to meet them at the block and district level, and now they are, making policies at a state secretariat. And I see the same amount of enthusiasm in them, which I found lacking in the earlier or the previous generation, and that is my own belief. And there is a lot of action which is already happening. I think that mindset shift when people are talking, and even at the policy level, in the governing level, whether it is about energy transition, I'll give you one example. Just today, there is an event going on in Jharkhand, and there is a report which is being launched in that state, which is on what are the different pathways of livelihood transitions for the state of Jharkhand, which heavily depends on fossil fuel based economy. There's a lot of coal mines and there's a lot of other mines, a lot of industries which are all based on fossil fuel. So if you're looking at energy transition, what is going to happen in next 30 to 70 years? What will be the impact on the livelihoods of those who are dependent on it, who are directly dependent on it, who are not maybe directly but due to the ancillary dependence? What will happen to their livelihood? What will be the macro level impact, and what would be the micro level impact on these people? And if this transition should happen, what should be the strategies? What should be the pathways? And this was the entire study was mainly supported by a task force that was created by the government of Jharkhand, which consisted of different departments and industry bodies within Jharkhand. Now, this is a proactive step. I just gave you one example. So there are those different things happening. In terms of changing the mindset of larger public, I think we need to communicate, we need to sensitize, we need to have our education system look into these issues, update those, and then start working. And today in Nepal, I'm not laughing, but laughing at the irony of it. In Nepal, they are calling it Gen Z revolution. Now, they are saying that it's against corruption. I don't want to get into the geopolitics of it, but then that is a very, very strong statement that the young people of Nepal has given in response to whatever steps the government has taken. So I think the young population today, if they are sensitized, they will have the capacity to grow, and I have seen that happening. So I'll rest here. In terms of your suggestions for the organizers, the organizations may have noted that. I will leave up to them. Yes, sir.
RS Foundation, we do a bit in the areas of health and education for less privileged class of children who are poor and meritorious. We often find here that we are most of the time guided by the social media, and many a time misled by the social media. If we try to take stock of the things of the real world and social media or the virtual world, which we so call it, you have rightly mentioned another a case of Nepal, which is also related to the social media. Besides what you're talking of the correction, we are talking of the correction. Now I come back to my query here to all those esteemed panelists, that let's talk at the micro level also. We are good enough at the micro level with our ecosystem, well maintained, and our expertise in this domain which we are talking about. What is the environment inside this hall? What is the climate here? Are we talking the same thing which we are having here? My body sensors and intuition is enough sensitive to find that it is not as per the norms which some of the panelists have defined. So unless we walk the talk, the observation is, and the suggestion is also here, I would not like to pester the organizers and the media over here, and my due apologies in advance to them, that we need walk the talk, and I could say that the demonstration what we do inside shall be followed by the Gen Z which we are talking about, and this demonstration will make the movement, and we can then boldly and confidently talk about this Earth Care, One Planet, One Earth, One Family. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for your suggestion, sir. We have noted this. I don't see any more hands, but I can just take one question if it is a clear question. Someone who has not yet asked any question, if there is one more question.
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to make my remark, and then a small question which would possibly wake us all up from this deep slumber. First of all, my compliments to Dr. Bhuvana Balasubramaniam. Nutrition is the most underlooked, but also the most conspiracy-driven movement in the entire world, controlled by the world order from the West. Having made the statement not today, but at 2010 in the United Nations, my point to that is that when are we going to wake up to our traditional ecological knowledge, preserve it, which also forms the underlying statement for any nationhood itself. So you take away the cultural DNA of which the food systems are underpinned, you destroy the nations that have been the conspiracy from day one. Next is the water. Next are the healthcare and all the underpinning systems. So if we are going to look at Viksit Bharat 2047, India perspective, what needs to be done? Number one, is there a 7-step strategy? I think you had a couple of steps that you have put in various media or in your previous engagements. Globally, I think we had one question, Mr. Pandey, you had said, what is the impact or the effect if you turned off the air conditioners for 1 hour globally or even in India? Globally, it's about like 22,000 cars taken off from the planet for 1 year. 103 or 104,000 tons carbon dioxide equivalent, what we call it. That would be the result of 1 hour of not using air conditioners. But the point is that it's not about the systems. It's about behavioral change. It's about the consumerism. It's about the levels at which we human species can think and plan and architect. I think the very definition of architecture could be changed in how we live.
Thank you.
How we evolve. So any remarks on this from the esteemed panel, including yourself? Thank you.
Your question, I'll just take that question to Bhuvna, yeah, and we will respond, but our time is up, so in case, the response is short, we can take that offline.
I think that's a very important question that you've asked, and it's a very fundamental question about when are we going to wake up to what we did, right? So there's a lot that has happened that has pivoted us away from what we traditionally did, and some for the right reasons. Even, for instance, Green Revolution, when we were a staple deficit nation and there was significant hunger, we needed to have movements like a Green Revolution to provide food. But we're all asking the right questions here. And I see this across the board when I speak with governments, when I speak with the state level officials, when I speak with my development partner colleagues, there is definitely a movement. And when you see the decades of influences that have created a pivot away from our traditional practices. It takes its course of time for it to actually create pathways which make sure that it's sustainable. For instance, the reality is that we need to continue to feed a population, a growing population, although at a declining rate. We need to continue to sustain livelihoods. We also need to continue to diversify and look at the right kind of food production, the healthier food production. We need to create decentralized ownerships of, say, seeds, of the way that agriculture is being done, of you know, the way that fertilizer, you move away from fertilizers, create opportunities for biofertilizers. There is an intention behind all of this, and there are actions happening towards all of this, but those actions are probably slower for us sometimes, that the frustrations are high. But I just want to, you know, let you know that there are action that's happening towards that, and hopefully, you know, a few years down the line when we talk about it, we talk about the scale that we've achieved towards those lines.
Thank you so much, Bhuvna. And, you know, thank you so much, Anumata and Dr. Preeti, for all the insights and thoughts that you have shared, and because you have been working on this on a daily basis. So these were not just theoretical ideas, these were actually coming from vast experience. And I think, you know, thank you to the audience as well for asking those important questions. I know some of you may still have follow-up questions, and some of the questions may not have been answered as well. But we will definitely catch up after this session during lunch, and we can always look forward to the discussion. So once again, thank you to the organizers, and I give you back, Bhavna.
Thank you. Well, indeed, sir, you're so right about it. It's such an important topic that we're discussing. We can go on and on about it. It will take hours. But for stage, we'd have to consider a timeline. We are closing it for stage, but we'll definitely take it forward offline. With this, I'd like to thank our panel. Can we have a big round of applause? What an insightful exchange we had. And I'll request all of you to please stand for one group photo. Also, I'll request my team to please send plants on stage as a token of our love and appreciation. Yeah, but first we'd get clicked. Let's hear it loud together, everyone. Yes, let's invite Ms. Davne as well. A big round of applause as we thank them. Thank you. Now, Mr. Pandey, I'll request you to please honor and thank our panelists. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. I'd request you to please, we'll request you to please stay here. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us. Professor Preeti, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for being on panel. And now we'll request Ms. Rupa to please present plant as a token of... Yeah, we'll first request all of you to please... You can also stand in front of the table. Thank you, Mr. Pandey, for moderating the conversation. All right. With this, I'd first request my team to please get ready to clear the stage as we get ready for the next talk. And a reminder once again, our website is www.earthcareawards.com for all your 13th Earthcare Awards related queries and registration. Please do visit the website. All right, ladies and gentlemen, up next we get ready for youth perspective. As we look to the future, one truth is clear. Youth will be at the heart of climate action. It is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Abhir Bhalla, youth environmentalist and sustainability consultant, to share his thoughts on the role of youth in climate action. As I invite him, I would like to tell you that he's identified by BBC World News as amongst the foremost youth environmentalists globally in 2020. Abhir has been working in the field of environmental conservation for more than 11 years. As an independent sustainability consultant and policy advocate, he has led more than 250 workshops and speaking engagements at various forums. It is a pleasure as we invite him to the stage to take the center. Let's put our hands together as we welcome Mr. Abhir Bhalla.
Thank you. So the toughest job is to stand between people and their lunch. And so I'm going to try and stick to my time. In the next 20 minutes, 25 minutes, I want to talk to you about three things primarily. The first is 5 minutes of narcissism. I want to tell you a little bit about my journey, to tell you how I went from being a climate disbeliever to standing here. The second thing that I want to do is use some examples to talk about how young people are uniquely positioned to sort of act on climate change. And finally, I'm going to end with some more insights on what today's topic is, which is the role of youth in climate action. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, I started out back when I was in class 6, and I used to believe, so started out as a climate activist in class 6, 7, been doing this for over 13 years now. By the time I reached class 10, I had my first MOU signed with the Delhi Metro as a 16-year-old, which you know the government would get cold feet to do otherwise. And now I'm working with a Big Four consulting and accounting firm by day and hugging trees by night. But no, I mean, doing climate advocacy work in my own time outside of my day job as well. So to tell you a little bit about my journey, right? In class 6, I was much like President Trump. At worst, I used to think that climate change is a hoax, and at best, I used to think it's certainly not my responsibility to work on. And around that time, two things happened. I was diagnosed with bronchitis, which is a seasonal cough, cold, allergies because of prolonged exposure to Delhi's air pollution. And around the same time, I had my mom and my nanny, as you would in most of our households, telling me that, you know, get involved with something meaningful in school, do something new and unique. So I happened to, you know, I was the teacher's pet in all of my classes. Bahut makhan lagata tha. I used to have their favor all the time. But one day I was caught bunking this once in 2-3 week environment workshop that we used to have in school. And my class teacher sent me back into that workshop, and it so happened that they were talking about air pollution that day. So that's when the personal health linkage came together with sort of my interests in school, and started working in this field, joined the Environment Club, did a bunch of anti-firecracker campaigns, so on and so forth. Fast forward to class 10, I read in the Times of India, that the Delhi Metro is the world's first green metro system. And much like idiotic 15-year-old, I decided कि इनके साथ कुछ तो करना है. I didn't have a plan. So after school, I marched into the Delhi Metro's office and I told the lady at the reception that मुझे, I want to meet your head of sustainability. I had not sent any email, not planned any meeting. I just barged into this government office close to Barakamba Road. And you can see that I'm not very tall right now. I was much shorter when I was in class 10. And literally the receptionist peers over her desk, pulls down her glasses and says, "Mummy kho gayi hai kya? Yahan pe kya kar rahe ho?" And so that sort of annoyed me, of course, but also sort of motivated me to double down on my efforts. And this is coming, ladies and gentlemen, on the back of us living in a country where every third politician's lecture is about how it is time for India's Yuva Pidi and how India must capitalize on its demographic dividend. But on the other hand, you step into a government office and that's how you're received. So, of course, better planning on my part was needed, which I did. So for 3 months, I was pushed around like a government file from one office to the other, one waiting room to the other. 3 months later, I got my meeting with the head of sustainability for Delhi Metro. And what we did was 3 things. We did plantation, awareness, and cleanliness drives at and around Delhi Metro stations. And frankly, if you ask me, that's nothing unique. There are enough non-profits doing all of these 3 things. What was unique was that we stood at Delhi Metro platforms and we did these nukkad nataks on topics ranging from renewable energy to bamboo toothbrushes or waste segregation. And arguably, the Delhi Metro is the one space in the city where you will find blue-collar staff, white-collar staff, didis, bhaiyas, students, grandparents. It's a unifier. So we stood at the Delhi Metro platform and we disrupted the daily schedule of the average commuter who has their earphones in and is watching Netflix to look up and say, "Tell me, how can I get a subsidy on my EV? Or why should I buy bamboo toothbrushes?" So anyway, this went on for 3 years right up until COVID. After that, I started freelancing with a bunch of nonprofits throughout college, and now I'm working with a Big Four accounting firm. So why I'm telling you all of this is not to sort of talk about myself, but to mention that all of us, not just young people, can go from being a disbeliever to being where where I'm standing today and talking about the issue, working on the issue. That's number 1. Now, mudde ki baat. Let's use one example, right? What is the role of young people in climate action? We know that for the last 8-9 odd years, every competent authority in India, especially in Delhi actually, for the last 8-9 years, India came later, every competent authority has banned either the sale, purchase, use, consumption, or some combination of all of them, of firecrackers, right? And before I move forward with this example, let me tell you that I'm not singularly targeting firecrackers. This same example, which I'm going to walk you through, applies to your 10 and 15-year diesel and petrol ban on your vehicles. It applies also on your PUC checks, which many of us prefer to give a 500 rupee note or a 1,000 rupee note to the cop when we're caught rather than to actually sort of get our pollution checks done, right? So this is just one example. So what's the point that I'm trying to make here, right? In 2020, first year of COVID, we had 850 is nothing, right? We all know that if 1200 cases were filed, Diwali ki raat ko kaun hi itna vela hai ki police ko phone karke shikayat kar raha hai, right? So 1200 is probably 12,000, but for 2 minutes, let's assume that 1200 complaints of firecrackers is a representative number, right? Now, tell me, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think would happen if over a period of 5 years, this number of 1200 were to fall to say, I don't know, 300, right? Something significant happens. All of you would have seen a political rally either on the news or in person. Our politicians are talking about infrastructure, defense, foreign policy. If you're lucky, they'll talk about women's safety. They're not talking about climate change, right? But what does a politician care about? Politician wants satta, politician wants votes. So if these 1,200 complaints were to fall to 300 complaints, is it not possible for me to argue that in that particular constituency, whoever the MP or MLA is, would notice that trend over 5 years to say, boss, 900 log kam patake phod rahe hain. और अगर 900 लोग कम पटाखे फोड़ रहे हैं, then to the rational politician, assuming we live in a blessed world where our politicians are rational, to the rational politician, that would mean that 900 additional votes could possibly be garnered by talking about issues like enforcing a firecracker ban or like enforcing a 10 or 15-year petrol or diesel ban. And that is how young people come in, because, we know India's famous demographic dividend. And so all of this talks about what I just mentioned. But young people are a key part of our electorate. And if if politicians realize that they can sort of, see an advantage in society adopting existing rules, that's how we can find a solution. Because today we're stuck in a catch-22, right? The government is saying we've put out the laws, there are laws. Society is saying this is too big an issue for us to handle. And corporates are saying, the government has to lead the way. So we're stuck in a catch-22. Responsibility kiski hai? Responsibility hamari hai. It's not the governments, it's not the corporates, it's society. And yes, there are enough studies which will tell you that 80% of the change has to come from corporates and from governments. But that is not the first 80%. The first 20% has to come from society. And like I said, this example applies across cases, right? There are linkages between the climate crisis and domestic violence. There are linkages between, we're seeing the worst rains in places like Punjab, Uttarakhand, Delhi in the last 12 to 20 odd years on average. There are linkages between climate and, all of these issues, unemployment, voter turnout also for that matter, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is that today we have, and by the way, we live in the world's largest democracy. This is a CSE report. 2019 was the first time India's two largest political parties mentioned the words climate change. And mind you, that was one sentence. Fast forward to the 2024 general election, you can see that the manifestos of the two leading parties had several points. But how many of these points were mentioned by any of our politicians in their rallies? Because the majority of India is not opening these manifestos and reading them. So, what do we do? What do young people do? This is a study by Harvard, and I don't entirely endorse this study because I have my own set of problems with it, but it gives you a good enough picture. There's a study by Harvard which says that if 1 billion people do their bit for the planet, and as we know, 1 billion people is less than the population of even India. If 1 billion people do their bit for the planet, we singularly can reduce carbon emissions by 20%. No corporates, no sarkar, no tu main blame game, just 1 billion people. Now you might ask, what is doing your bit? And that's where the study is a bit limited, but the study defines doing your bit as these 9 things. And I think from everyone in this room, we can do a reasonable amount of this, right? 5 years ago, conferences such as this one would have had Bisleri bottles. Today, conferences such as this one have these glass bottles that we're drinking from. So these 9 things, 1 billion people, no tutu meme, no sarkar, no corporates, no passing the buck. Finally, 2 things that I want to end with. Speaking to what my topic is in terms of what young people can do and what is the role of young people in climate action, right? I have had the opportunity to and privilege to represent India at least India or sometimes the Commonwealth of Nations, but at these big climate conferences such as the COPs or the SBs, I have been there for at least 5 of them in person. And the problem at these conferences is that, yes, on one side today, it is a privilege that young people are being given a platform, right? Today I'm here and I'm being given this platform. But today we're at a stage where young people not just need a seat at the table, but also a say at the table. So if I'm standing at COP27 in Egypt and talking about what issues in Punjab or Delhi look like, that's well and good. But who's listening to me is also what matters, right? I've spoken at several such conferences, and a typical trend that you will see across conferences, right? This is not speaking to this one, is that the most important person in the room is the one who starts the conversation. Chahe wo mantri ho, chahe wo chief secretary ho, koi bhi ho. And wahi mantri ji ya wahi chief secretary stage pe aake bolenge ki, it's very good, we're giving a platform to the young people. I'm looking forward to the youth panel and today's conference. 5 minutes after that gentleman gets off stage, you won't find him in the room. Why? Arey, meri sarkari meeting hai, mera busy agenda hai, all of that. And that's true. Even I'm going to run off right after this, right? But there is something to be said about structures of power and how, if young people are to be given an opportunity, these things need to be turned around, right? Dr. Ghosh, for example, I've worked with him a bunch of times and I've pulled his leg about this also last year, I think. But Dr. Ghosh meets the environment minister at least once a month, if not more often. Today, if he was here to listen to this or to any other panel or any other conversation, then what impact would that make? And these are very small examples, right? What happens at the COPs? There is a World Leader Summit which happens. Young people are given the platform on the first day or the last day, but the leaders who are actually in the position and offices to make change are not actually listening to the young people who per se have been given an opportunity, right? So I think the one line I would leave it at is young people getting a seat at the table is not enough, but they need a say at the table and they need to be heard at that table. And with that, I'm happy to take questions, if any, or if you're all very hungry, I can take them offline as well. Thank you so much.
It's wonderful listening to you. And I work with youth across India through various means, including talks like Yes Talks, Youth for Environment Solutions. And it is not a question of elders giving you the time. Today, it is an opportunity for the youngsters to seize the time because that's where the future lies. But my concern still is that when we speak in schools and colleges, how do we make sure, especially the youngsters, and I am also your age, roughly 25. So how do we make sure that, these kind of talks grow beyond ceremonial celebrations and actually become a matter of action each day, because we breathe 25,000 times a day. And what could be the role of all the youngsters sitting here, let me tell you, all are young at heart, to ensure that the vibration happens across, because beyond 3 minutes, they can't even survive without air, all of us sitting here. So what do we need to do that we grow beyond ceremonial celebrations. Forget the politicians, forget the seniors, because you have to seize the opportunity. And this is where my question is to the Gen Z also, because this is the momentum of Gen Z, we have seen that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that question. I think very important one. I'll answer that with an anecdote, right? Very often, I'm told that, people such as myself don't need to be standing in a suit giving a talk. This is the age to hustle, go down and experience the ground reality of it. And that's very fair advice, and that's something I do in both my day job and what I do outside of it. So we are doing a project and this is per se off the record, but we're doing a project in a small place called Wandur Gram Panchayat in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, right? And over there, we've been working for the last 3 odd years on issues of waste segregation. And we faced a bunch of issues which you only experience on the ground, everything ranging from a baling machine not getting fixed to a contractor working with the rural department and the panchayat and saying that, I'm not accountable for the repair of this baling machine or collection of waste, all of those things, right? What we did after a year and a half or so of troubleshooting for the issue is we decided we'll pick 8 youngsters from the community, right? So we picked 8 girls from the community who had cleared school and or college, so minimum of school. And these young ladies today, in the last 1.5 years since their selection and training, are today, if I may say so, at least my humble analysis of it is that those 8 ladies today have a lot more sway in their community than the Pradhan does. You know why? Because they come from that community, they work with that community, and that community listens to them because they've gone from being the neighbor ki ladki to being awarded by the rural department for championing waste segregation. So, point of this example, sir, is to say I think we need more of that. I totally agree with you that we can't have conversations in silos beyond, a certain period of time, and it needs to reach the masses. How will that happen? Probably through projects like the one I mentioned, because we need young people to lead from the front, right? So hopefully that makes some sense. And I hope that many others continue to work like those 8 ladies I spoke about. Yeah.
Abir, okay, got it, thank you. Hi, Abir, Sensei Raj, founder of Vision India 2032 and Global Changemakers Network. It really gives me hope and pleasure and makes me joy to see you speak. But let's get beyond the speaking things, yeah? I am a search and rescue mountaineer since age 14, and even today I do it. I do it to even go to the armed forces, train them, and also, get people's backsides from there when they get injured or stuck. But moving beyond that, let me not ask this question, but make this remark. How did you come to this venue today? Right. Did you cycle? Did you take a metro? Did you drive?
I live across the road, so I couldn't take the metro.
Good for you.
Yes.
You walked?
Yeah.
I walked as well.
Sorry, no, full disclosure, I didn't walk. I'm just recovering from influenza. But yes, normally I would have walked because I'm right across the road. Yeah.
All right, so you get the drift. This is a question for everybody, right? From the Gen Alpha, because I'm not going to bother. Me, too hard, old dog, you can't teach new tricks. But then Gen Alpha is a hope. Because I have a niece, she's 13. When I came back to India after 17 years, she asked me, you preach, people pay you all of things, $10,000, $12,000, whatever. But how are we going to change? Because you guys have screwed up the planet. It's for us to clean up after you. This is the bottom line today. So from here, how are we going to move forward together in a collaborative way? Because our hope is only you and the Gen Alpha. So if they are going to move forward, is there anything that you have planned that we could plan together? Because I have a blueprint, and so many others have a blueprint, but we fail to work as a team. I play football, and you can't win playing football just by a striker or a goalkeeper. And that's what is absolutely needed. But I would love to hear what are the things that we could do in practical, realistic terms, like you mentioned about the COP20.
About the what, sorry?
The COP20?
Yeah.
Yeah. The positive impact of that is what? Everybody knows. Nothing. We chase our own tails. But we created another 34,000 carbon CO2 equivalent. So where do we go from there? Let's hear your remark. Thanks.
Can I add some heat to this because I disagree partly with this question. His statement that old horses cannot be taught new tricks. I think there is a difference between people sitting here and the old horses. If we have created the mess, all of us will have to solve this mess. Otherwise, whatever we do is called SHIT. Don't take it me differently. It is called special high intensity talks, which mean nothing. I think we all will have to take up the collective responsibility to clear the mess. And it's not the Gen Z responsible or Gen Alpha responsible. We are there together on this. Please.
Well said.
Let me share to what he said. No, come here. You can't go back and sit. You started it. Now we're going to be comrades in arms. This was at the UN. You know, the UN has this special program of celebrating young leaders from around the world. They handpick them, they train them, they groom them, they bring to the UN. And then they coach them how to speak as well. So I uncoached this young lady from Johannesburg, the rural community of Johannesburg. And then I coached her after that. That means you unlearn the SHIT they coach, the official lingo of the UN, and then, of course, relearn. So this is what came out after this when she went on to the video conference. She said, this is our world. Those of you who are watching this, live responsibly and leave responsibly. Think about it. Let that settle down in everybody's mind.
Sure. I think both of you have
You want to
answered.
respond, but it is not only the human being we are responsible for. We are responsible for all the living beings because none of the living beings have created the air pollution. Only we have done it. So we need to solve it.
Yep. I'm going to, I think we'll have a very long discussion offline. We're at time. But very quickly, I think, firstly, both of you have answered each other's questions to some degree. What I would say is I do agree in that it's not about Gen Alpha or Gen Z right now because, you know, I think gone are the days where 10 years ago we would say, you know, our grandchildren's generations will be affected by climate change. I think seeing what we're seeing in Punjab, Uttarakhand, etc. right now, seeing the trends we've seen last year with heat waves, it's all here and now, right? So, and I think there are phenomenal examples of collaboration, but they're not there enough, right? So look at India Climate Collaborative. Today, what needs to change is non-profits and even young environmentalists. I mean, unfortunately, there's not more of them in the room right now, but we all have a good joke about the fact that these days, even the youth environmentalist space is turning from one of collaboration to competition, right? So just like the India Climate Collaborative has brought together different non-profits and corporates from across the board to work work collaboratively, I think we need that between society, non-profits, and governments at a much larger scale for sure. With that, let's continue offline. Thank you so much.
Having heard you, I'm certain the future is in very safe hands. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, day is just getting more interesting, but understanding that we have certain time limit that we need to follow, we'd have to close the stage part of it. Of course, we continue to discuss offline, but Abhir, I have to invite you again. We would like to felicitate you, and I request Ms. Navne to please join us, presenting a token of our love and respect to you. And thank you for sharing the youth perspective. Can you please get the plant on stage? Where we can put our hands together, make it loud for Abhir, everyone. Thank you so much. Well, with this, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude today's proceedings. I would love to extend a very heartfelt thanks to our distinguished speakers. Some of them are here. Thank you so much. To all our partners, and of course, to each one of you who have joined us as audience. Ladies and gentlemen, we remain committed to recognizing innovations, amplifying voices, and fostering integrated solutions for a climate-resilient future. With this, I request all of you to please proceed towards the pre-function area where the food is being served. Enjoy yourselves, have great conversations about how we can bring the change, and have a great time. Thank you.
I take this opportunity to congratulate every single person in the room for being a hope giver, a custodian of our planet, and for making us proud Indians who are contributing in this fight against climate crisis.
If you are here today this evening, that means you care.
हाँ, so I'll do one shot, then we can retake अगर आपको लगे कुछ missing है. आप full length ले रहे हो या यहाँ तक ले रहे हो? ठीक है, बढ़िया. तो button बंद नहीं कर रहा मैं, ठीक है. हाँ, okay. Hi, I'm here at the JSW Times of India Earth Care Awards, and I have a very important message for young people across the country. Young people today not just need a seat at the table, but a say at the table. And this initiative is doing a fantastic job of highlighting some of India's youngest people, youngest bright minds, and what they're doing on climate. So this is your chance. Read up about the awards and definitely consider applying. Thank you. Works?